And I'm sure they're all dark.
Yes, that bottom one is my home landline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You want my cell?
they're quite thick.
Yes. Hold on.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
Taylor Swift rides.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Leawood City Council Governing Body meeting for February 5th. The meeting will come to order and will rise as you can for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I would ask that the clerk call the roll, please.
Okay, Mayor Elkins is present and presiding. Councilmember Phila.
Here.
Councilmember Sunkel.
Here.
Councilmember Larson.
Here.
Councilmember Gayed.
Here.
Councilmember Sippel.
Here,
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Kane.
Here.
Councilmember Castor.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I find that the entire council is here and a quorum is present, and we'll move on to the business of the evening. There were no citizens who signed in to provide comments to the council this evening, so we'll move on. There are no proclamations. I think there are no presentations or recognitions. There's no special business, and that takes us to the consent agenda. And I am advised that there is at least one council person who wishes to pull items from the consent agenda. Ms. Kane?
Yes, thank you. I would like to pull E and L, Edward and Lori.
Thank you. Any others? Yes,
Mr.
Councilman
Mayor, I'd
Sippel.
like to pull item F as in Frank.
Thank you. Any others? And I would pull item J, please. So with that, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sippel, or Councilman Sippel. Thank you, Councilman Phillip. All those in favor of approving items on the consent agenda with the exceptions of items E, F, L, or E, F, J, and L, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda with those exceptions is unanimously approved. Councilmember Kane, item number E.
Yes, here comes Chris. Thank you. Great. So I read with great joy, now that I have 2 grandchildren who go to the Leawood Pool all the time, to hear that we were going to get replacements for our crab, turtle, snake, and alligator. And I was wondering if are they going to be installed prior to this pool season?
The items that you see listed here will be. The only thing we're still trying to process is whether or not the slide will be replaced
Because of that drop off.
because of the
bottom.
drop off. So we are still looking at that. And we will probably have something within the next 30 days. We're trying to find out, one, if we can find something, we replace it, and then if so, can that be installed prior to the opening of the season?
Well, kudos for having money left over from the dive stand project, and with that, I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sunkel. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of approving item number E on the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it unanimously, and item E is approved. We'll just go in numerical or alphabetical order here. So item F, I believe, was Councilman Sippel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to recuse myself from voting on this issue because I was involved with the Sienna Homes Association formulating the agreement with the city on the rebate for installing LED lights in our streetlights, thus saving the city a significant amount of money. And this pertains to the last installment, paying back the Homes Association for the expense incurred when we installed those LED lights. So I think it's a wonderful program. There's a number of HOAs that own their own streetlights that participate in this, and this will be our last installment, so we're back to where we started in the Sienna Homes Association. So
Thank you, Councilman Sippel. Is there any other discussion concerning item, I want to say letter F, please? If not, is there a motion?
Oh, quick question.
Yes, Councilman Harrison.
So Chuck, for those that are new, and to remind myself, because I am curious about more of this, the Sienna, they own their own lights. Could you give us a quick recap?
In a number of homes association, and Hallbrook is one, where the developer put in special lights, different lights than the standard aluminum poles with mercury vapor lights. They put in more different kinds of lights. And so the HOA is responsible for those light poles and the light bulbs and the globes.
Okay.
And so if we would have a car crash, and we would have to pay that, so we've got insurance for that. But the city pays for the electricity for all the lights. So we installed LED lights, as did Hallbrook and a couple of other HOAs, which reduces the city's expense. And the difference between what they were paying and what they're now paying over time is paid back to the HOA, and that's what we did in Sienna. And I think Hallbrook has done it also.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Phillip.
So if I understand correctly, what happens now, all the money that the city's been paying you for the light fixtures will now be savings that we will accrue for on an item.
The city is paying less for electricity now than they will, that they did before. So all those savings are going to go to the city.
It was truly a win-win.
It's a good deal for everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Thank you, Councilman Harrison. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Any discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor of approving item F on the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it unanimously, and item F is approved. I think that alphabetically that takes us to J, which is the one that I pulled, I believe. And I would just note for Chief Finger, I want to thank him for the annual report. And I would note that, once again, Leawood is the safest city in Kansas for populations over 10,000. If I read the report correctly, it's actually for cities over 5,000 residents. And that's a pretty good record, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And note that we still have a little bit of violent crime in our city, but it's dropped, and most importantly, we reported no homicides this year. So we're grateful again to you and your force for the safety that you provide to all of us. Just a couple of things, and Chief, I'd ask you to go into a little more detail, but the other things that jumped out at me, which I think are just absolutely remarkable, is that we have the expertise in cybercrime on our little 34,000 city, population city police force to recover millions of dollars and to somehow find a way to prosecute a Nigerian national. So, Chief, could you fill us in a little bit more on that and tell us a little more about your detective?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. We have a detective on our staff. His name is Mark T-Rink, and Mark is making quite a name for himself, not only within our community, but across the state, the nation, and now internationally, where he was able to secure a conviction from a Nigerian resident who scammed one of our citizens out of $10,000. And it's a rare occasion when scams occur that we can actually recover the funds that were stolen. And in this particular case, those funds were recovered. In another case, he was able to secure over $1 million that was stolen through yet another scam. This was not a private individual, it was an entity. This happened to, and you talk about a rare instance where that amount of money was recovered and returned to the victim. It's outstanding work from Detective T-Rink.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments for the Chief? Yes.
I just wanted to note that Officer Cody Morris, who was named Officer of the Year, is also serving on our REIC committee and is really a great participant. So thank you for his time on that task force.
I will let him know. He's certainly one of our finest.
I was really, really touched by how sensitive he was in our discussions when he has someone pulled over and he has to think about whether to give a warning or not. And he's thinking about the impact of the cost of that ticket on that particular individual. And I just thought that was such great sensitivity that he shared with us that he has in each given situation. It made me very proud and recognizing why we have such a great police force.
I'll certainly pass on your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Villa. Yes, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you. Because I grew up in the Schoolhouse Rock knowledge is power era. I'm thinking back to Officer T-Reg's skill set and our information officer being in the back row there. Is there a way that we can be communicating to our residents, especially our more vulnerable population who are frequently targeted for these cyber scams, about tips they might, through our e-news? I know we have this great new e-newsletter, and we're doing so much more on social media with Liz Gordon being on staff to do that. I just feel like this is a great opportunity to remind our residents, but also the generation that has older parents, hey, Mom, the bank is never going to call you and ask you for your password. You know, that is a scam. Please hang up and call me. You know, that kind of, because that's what's happening. I mean, it happened to a famous celebrity last month. So, and it's probably similar to what happened, you know, with one of these residents. I just feel like the more people see it, to educate people, to have the conversations with their parents and, you know, their kids, I guess maybe even their kids, for that matter. It's not just the elderly, but they really are targeting the elderly at a very unfair rate.
Absolutely, they are, and we like to stay fairly consistent with our social media messages in regard to various types of scams. We don't knock those messages out left and right because then nobody will, you know, pay attention to them. So, yes, on occasion, we'll certainly, and we have put out those messages on our social media platforms.
Great, thank you. That's all I had.
Other questions or comments? Well, Chief Finger, please extend to Detective T-Ring the fact that we took note and we were very greatly appreciative of the work that he does, as well as the rest of your force. But this is, we talk about cutting edge stuff. This cybersecurity and cybercrime stuff is really cutting edge. And for a small town in the middle of Kansas to be on top of it this way is really remarkable. So thank you very much.
Move to
Thank you,
approve.
Mayor.
And one last thing, I would note, I believe that the chief is about to celebrate his last anniversary with the city tomorrow. Is that correct?
That is correct.
18 years.
18 years tomorrow.
Well, thank you for your service. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, Ms. Villa,
Move to approve?
thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Councilman Sippel. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of approving item L off of our consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
It was Jay.
Oh, I'm sorry, J. Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Item J is unanimously approved. Takes us to item L, Councilman Kane.
Yes, thank you. Chris, so I read this staff report, and some of it, even though I'm on Parks and Recs, I didn't know, so I'm posing the question this evening. So under Parks Maintenance Facility, it says the design team, the last bullet of the 5, the design team is requesting additional compensation because of the long delay and the extended number of meetings and time with submission reviews. Staff is reviewing this to determine an appropriate action for resolution. So can you elaborate on that? Because, I mean, certainly there's a contract in place, and certainly the delays were not our fault. They're for whatever various reasons. So is this more commonplace, and what does it mean when appropriate action for resolution if we're under contract at a
So-
certain level?
Yes, so I will make some comments, and then if Patty has anything to follow up with. I will say that staff has asked for some detailed information from the architect so we can try to determine what they're saying, not just saying, you know, we're requesting X amount of dollars. what were the delays for, what was your involvement in that, and the whys. So we are processing that right now. And again, as far as the contract, I think we're looking at trying to get that information back. We don't have liquidated damages on the contract, and the contract hasn't been extended for that period of time like we have done on some of the other contracts recently, but we are, considering that. But right now, we're just gathering information and evaluating that, and that was pretty recent. I think last week is when we first got, maybe the end of the week before last, is when we got some of the information back.
Difficult to go into detail at this point. There's two contracts. There's the architect's contract and there's the contractor's contract. The contractor is the one who's delayed it, and the architect is in the process of giving us the reasons for the delay. Obviously, it's been, at this point, 8 months, 9 months, and it's anticipated to be a year late. Part of the explanations were supply chain, part of it was change in personnel. There's different reasons. We're trying to make sure two things are happening. One, that we understand and have a handle on what that the architect's request is justified, that it's not just some number out of thin air, and trying to figure out the main reasons for the delay, since this is just kind of coming up to us now, and figuring out what the contractor may be liable for.
Thank you. So will this come before us when this appropriate action for resolution, is that going to come before us one way or the other? Yeah, when it wasn't our fault, if you will, you know what I mean? We have contracts all over the place and big projects all over the place. So this could very well set a precedent in my mind anyway, that, and a slippery slope, right? All right, that's all I had on that one. Thank you. As long as it's going to come back before us, and we'll see that. If you all didn't read the fine print here, it says the Tomahawk Park Playground replacement enhancement was over by $157,000, but the Leawood Foundation has agreed to fundraise for this project, so I wanted to say publicly thank you again to the Leawood Foundation, which is one of the best things we have. I mean, we're so lucky to have the Leawood Foundation as our 501c3 and always earning money for us as opposed to taking our money. So that's a whole nother conversation. And then lastly, I see that the shelter replacement at City Park is over $186,000, which I knew from our meetings. And once again, I want to publicly say that I take real issue with having to dumb down, if you will, the shelter projects because of other things that went over budget. So I really hope that we'll come to a decent resolution here, because I hate that we have to cut here and here and here because something that went way over through no fault of anybody up here, for sure. So I just wanted to keep that on everybody's radar, that we don't want things like our shelters to have to be, under whatever. The budget is the budget, but I don't like that at all. And you've heard me say that before, but I wanted to say it again. So with that, I move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Are there any other comments for Ms. Claxton? Is there a second then?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of approving item number L, or letter L from the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and item L is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claxton. That takes us to the mayor's report. I have just a couple of things. I note that on Friday, February 2nd, this last Friday, the city continued its tradition of celebrating both the Lunar New Year and, probably more importantly, our longstanding sister city relationship with Yilan, Taiwan. We were joined by Bill Huang, Director General of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Denver, and two of his office's consular officers, Natalia Wang and Elsa Lin. And I think it tells you something about the value that Taiwan generally and Yilan in particular attach to the relationship that we've developed over the last 36 years, which is a very long time. We hope that with the end of COVID, and hopefully tensions will die down a little bit. We seem to have quite a knack for finding sister cities that are in extreme conditions, but we hope that we'll be able to renew cultural exchange between Elon and the city of Leawood in the very near future. There were approximately 150 people, 135 to 150 people who participated in the festivities, which included a number of the governing body members here, and I appreciate your attendance at that. And we were regaled with some really entertaining presentations by a KU Chinese dance troupe, and it was really pretty remarkable. I wish. My wife didn't even get a video of it. I've got some pictures, but there were no videos of it. So I wish that those of you who weren't there, I wish you'd seen it. Item number 2, we have scheduled the Homeowners Association Conference that we talked about. It's scheduled for April 21st. It'll go from 2 until 4:30. It will include presentations in the first hour and a half by a number of our department heads, including our police chief, as well as our fire chief. And then we'll break, and this is where I'm going to look to you all for your leadership, is we're going to break into a series of breakout sessions organized by ward. And I'll be asking the 2 council members from each ward to lead that discussion and facilitate the breakout session, and then we'll congregate back together for the last half-hour session to have a readout on what those breakout sessions have indicated our concerns and how we've begun to engage between our council members in their wards and the homeowners associations to address some of those. So this is part of our continuing effort to continually enhance our level of engagement between city government and our homeowners associations, and we're very hopeful that the homeowners associations will participate. We anticipate that invitations for those will go out in the next week or 2. Diane and I have already worked up a draft of an invitation letter, and of course you all will be copied in on that. Third, I'll note this was always amazing to me, and it just tells us, you know, just how blessed we are by the public safety teams that we have. We spoke earlier about our police force and cybersecurity. This is kudos to our fire department. On Saturday night, one of our crews was called out to one of our local restaurants. An individual's airway had been completely blocked. He was unconscious, unresponsive. When as I understand it, the kind of on-the-scene diagnosis by the non-medical personnel there was that it was a concern about an allergic reaction of anaphylactic shock. But when our fire group got there, our team got there, they found out that there was an obstruction in the citizen's airway. They were able to remove it very quickly. He was resuscitated, and on scene was strong enough that he refused transport to the hospital. And all that was the result of the outstanding work of our fire team. So I just wanted to publicly recognize them once again for saving another life. And sometimes we tend to take, well, I don't think we actually do, but there's a tendency maybe to take these things for granted. But the prompt and very professional way in which our team handled that was once again shown here. So again, thanks to the fire crew. Last, I would be remiss, as I'm noting anniversaries, that there's an individual in the dais who's celebrating her 6th anniversary with the governing body and the city council. Ms. Larson, congratulations. 6 years. So we're glad that you're here. And that concludes the mayor's report. Are there any council people who have reports? Yes, Ms. Phillip, please.
I just wanted to tag off your mention of Elon, because that was the last that Betty Munson, after 14 years, was rolling off, and she has done an amazing job of chairing that committee. I've never seen such a great dragon dance as we had that night, and I do have some videos I will share with you. And one other thing about the HOA meetings, I noticed in the meetings that the city administrator, Diane, has met with some of the HOAs already. And so will you let us know if they're in our ward, if we can join you? Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Phillip. Any other council members' reports? If not, Diane, Ms. Stoddard, you wish to speak to us about one of your projects, please?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. You have before you in the agenda materials for this evening our quarterly update on the 2023 governing body goals and objectives. So these came out of a goal-setting session that the governing body had in January of 2023, and they were formally adopted by the governing body in March of 2023. We have provided some earlier quarterly progress reports to the governing body, and we bring this to you. There's a number of short-term goals, near-term goals, and long-term goals as we place them into different categories based on what we anticipated the timeline would be. And with strategic planning for this year, this might be one of the basis items for, working through some of these longer-term goals to sort of see if those are still on the priority list for this governing body and what you all would like to do. There's a number of the longer-term ones that we haven't begun working on yet at this point. I will follow up, since we were talking about it, on the homeowners association. There was a goal to establish a better relationship with homeowners associations, and as Councilmember Phila had mentioned, I noted that we had been invited to several homeowners association meetings over the course of last year, and in those cases I did let the governing body members whose ward those HOAs fell into about those meetings, and in a number of cases, council members did come to those meetings and were there also with me. But there were a variety of items that were kind of discussed and in the context of their overall meeting, and a lot of interest in fiber issues, and that was one of the dominant ones, and occasionally a public works issue or two, or a question that we could answer. But I think they were good in terms of learning about some things that maybe we didn't know. And with that, I know the department heads and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about these goals and the update that you have before you.
Yes, Ms. Larson.
Referenced in your report, we didn't hear back from several HOAs. I was wondering if you could let us know which HOAs those are, because some of the information for whoever the president or the leader of the HOAs are on the website. It's dated and material, and we might be able to assist in making contact with those HOAs. Sometimes, updating the latest president of the HOA isn't top of mind to, update that on the website. So I was just wondering if we could have that information and maybe help out.
That would be a great idea, Councilmember Larson. In fact, as we send out the invitations that the mayor mentioned, we'll pass that mailing list along to you all to see if you maybe have any corrections to that you might have. On the survey that we sent, we just sent a letter basically to earlier last year to all of the known addresses that we had, and we did have a number of people who corrected address information with us, which was greatly appreciated. And I noted that some HOAs sent that survey, fairly broadly, but it was kind of asking for what are your ideas on how to improve the relationship with the city, or how do you see that? And so there were some good ideas and good information that was gleaned from that. But we can always use any help that you may provide on making sure that those addresses are correct.
Yeah, I think the communication, I got to attend the one for one of our neighborhoods in Ward 2, and the communication was really good. They, one of the questions asked was about the empty building that we have on city property, and they were referring to the Justice Center because all the parking is indoor, and so they were seeing this empty parking lot and thought the Justice Center was empty and not being utilized. And so it's really good to have this conversation and communication so we can clear up any misinformation or misperceptions that folks might have. That one took me by surprise. So anyway, yeah. So we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Yes, Ms. Harrison.
Might I suggest, Ms. Stoddard, that you also send that letter, that invitation, to the couple of property management companies that have a bunch of Leawood properties? I know that I have 15 more days as my HOA president, and I know that my account manager has like 7 subdivisions in Leawood alone, she does. So she's probably a better contact to get that letter to the right people than a lot of others. She would have updated those folks, those account managers, community representatives, I think they're called. My Century is this one, but there are probably a few others.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
That's a great idea, and we'll certainly see if you all can help us with that, too. I know of a few based on some correspondence that I'd received, but I may not know all of them. Thank you.
Other comments? Ms. Stoddard, the only comment I would have is that I would say, and this is a good thing, but as I went through these, it appeared to me that your staff was pretty conservative on their levels of completion. And so there are a number of them that I noticed that from what I know about their level of completion, they're much further along than are reported on this report. So I appreciate the conservatism, but oftentimes we're having to ask staff to be realistic on the negative side and not inflate their views of things. In this case, I would encourage them to be realistic and to give us perhaps a more optimistic view on some of these things. Yes, Ms. Phillip.
I'm not sure if the numbers still apply, but back when we were trying to do this with the Sustainability Advisory Board for our annual meeting, we thought that we had like 20 HOAs, and we found out we had 101, because one HOA might be 3 houses on a cul-de-sac. So we really were shocked as to how many there actually were. And then I think we figured out that if you got 40 or so of them, you've got the majority, 40 HOAs. But it was always a challenge, so it looks like that has not changed.
Our ballpark expectation right now is for around 80 people, is what we're hoping, including the 10 or so that are at this table. So that's what we're hoping for. And then on a related topic, I'm going to ambush Mr. Powell here, but again, under the no surprises rule, I just wanted you all to be aware that very shortly we'll be issuing the Citizen Satisfaction Survey, which is one of those that I think undersold how far along we are in that process, Stephen. But would you share with the governing body so that they're not surprised as they start getting calls, from their constituents?
Absolutely. We finalized the survey on Friday with ETC, along with the cover letter that will be penned by Mayor Elkins. And they are going to spend the next couple of weeks working to get it formatted, to be printed and mailed. They'll also create the survey website, and then we'll get one last look at the survey and an opportunity to test the website before it all goes live. And so as of right now, we're on schedule for those surveys to start being mailed out in the 3rd week of February, pending no major issues with the final version of the survey or the website. And those survey responses should be coming in throughout the month of March, and then we'll expect a final report from ETC to you all in April.
And our hope is that will facilitate our strategic goal-setting project, along with some of the feedback that we get from the Homeowners Association conference. So we're going to have some additional pathways of information as we set strategic goals going forward. Thank you, Stephen, and apologies for not giving you a heads up to start with. Ms. Stoddard, anything else from you? Thank you. There are no committee recommendations, as I understand it this evening, nor is there any old business that takes us to new business. We're looking to schedule a couple of governing body work sessions, and just a warning, there may be one coming in April as well. So I know we're starting out the season with, or the year with a number of work sessions, but we've got a number of issues to address that I think deserve the discussion that's warranted in a work session. So we're looking to schedule a work session on Monday, February 19th at 6 p.m. to discuss the compensation and classification study, which is now complete. And in fact, some conversations generally about the scope of that pardon me, compensation and classification study have begun with some of the city's staff. And then the regular meeting, of course, will begin at 7:30 on that night. Pardon me. And then secondly, we hope to schedule a governing body work session on Monday, March the 18th at 6 p.m. to review the financial projections and provide direction on the 2025 budget. You probably will recall that in our consent agenda this evening, there was a budget calendar, and this is kind of the kickoff of our budget season here at the city, which will be certainly be interesting for four of us who have never been through that process before. So we'll be looking forward to the old hands to help us understand how that process works. Is there any discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve both of those settings of work sessions on February 19th and March 18th. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Thank you, Dr. Castor. Any discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor of scheduling a work session on February 19th at 6 p.m. and again on March 18th at 6 p.m., please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and by unanimous approval, work sessions on February 19th and March 18th are set. Is there any additional business to come before the council or the governing body this evening? If not, yes, Ms. Harrison.
Sorry.
No worries.
Thinking to those work session, can we maybe have a conversation? I know it just depends on the work schedules of the current governing body, but possibly starting work sessions maybe at 5:30 so that everything else started earlier, so the evening ended earlier. But I know we might need to have a conversation with people with day jobs and commutes. So I don't know how we would, anyway, just a thought.
Any reaction at this point in time?
Could you make it 5:30 or no? Is that tight?
It wouldn't be consistent, because I can't always promise 5:30.
Sure. But you could always make 6, maybe.
I could have
How
most.
about you, Stephen?
Yeah, I could do
You
early.
could do 5:30s?
Mhm.
Are we allowed to be flexible? Some work sessions are at 5:30, or for the greater good of the public and communication, do we have to always? Is there a rule?
You don't all, the way our ordinance currently reads, it doesn't matter what time you start the work session. You could start it at 2,
Oh,
but you're going to have the regular meeting at 7:30. We can change the ordinance, so your regular meeting is always at 7. And it's just a matter of if you couldn't have it at 5:30 one day and you had it at 6, it really is up to you all. If you want to do the 5:30 meetings with all meetings starting at 7, we can change the ordinance to that.
And I think I would encourage us to have an even broader discussion. Thanks for bringing it up, Ms. Harrison, because I think that a number of the issues that are going to be coming to us during the course of this year are going to merit a discussion that's longer than 50 minutes or an hour, that even in a 5:30 scenario that we would talk about. And so I'd like to see us at least have a discussion as to whether the governing body is willing to consider having work sessions on and off Monday, in which we could have a more robust and lengthy discussion. I know I have a tendency to filibuster, and I promise I won't do that if we have the length of time that's available for on and off Monday. But I do think, one that immediately comes to mind, of course, is that we'll during the course of this year, I know that we'll be having a discussion about 96th and Lee. And I think that work session will require and warrant more than simply 45 minutes to an hour for a discussion. So again, I think a discussion to more to come, but I think I'd like to go ahead and proceed with these two at 6 if that's acceptable to everyone.
Yep.
And I have now lost track of where I was at. Have we actually voted on that motion? We have voted on them.
I
We were
brought it
ready
too
to
late.
adjourn. Okay. I got the vote in before Ms. Harrison could send us down 5:30, so no worries at all. Any other business to come before the council this evening? If not, we stand adjourned, and I almost got it done in 30 minutes, but not quite, so. Thank